Today we have for talks at Google the man behind the label, Scott Jordan, the founder and CEO of SCOTTeVEST Clothing. So you may have seen his apparel in the Google store or online or even on my person, where I now have 23 pockets on my person right now, which is super handy, super useful. Scott's here today to talk to us about his new book, which is called Pocket Man. It's the story of really SCOTTeVEST, from his early days to becoming a lawyer to working at SCOTTeVEST full time to Shark Tank to the present day. So he's going to give us some thoughts on his journey, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. You can also find Scott's book on SCOTTeVEST.com and the Amazon Kindle store as well. So please join me in welcoming him to Google. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it. I'm a huge fan of Google, and it's a real honor to be here today. I have to tell you, I'm going to be just perfectly honest, this is my first speech for the book, so if I'm a little rough around the edges, please work with me. My team came up with all these cards, and I'm just going to talk freely. I do so much better just talking off the cuff. So, if there's something I say during the speech that you have a question on, just please interrupt me. Raise your hand. Ask me about that, because you might forget at the end. And it's about my journey, in starting SCOTTeVEST and what it means. How many of you guys are familiar with SCOTTeVEST before you got the email? Yay! Awesome. I see some customers here, and so the book is about the art of passionate personal promotion. Because when I sat down, I reflected on writing this book. I thought, well, what do I have to say? And it's hard because I've been at this now for 14 years. When I founded SCOTTeVEST in 2000, little did I know I was starting the first apparel brand on the internet. Before then, no apparel brands had started on the internet. And I'm not through living life and accomplishing things, so I was like, well, what am I going to write this book about? What makes me truly unique? And I talked to people that I was working with, my friends, my family, and they said one thing that always comes through when they talk to me is my passion. I'm really passionate about what I do, so the book is about my passion and my journey. And first and foremost, if you read this book, you will be entertained. I promise you that. It is an entertaining journey, because I did not want to write a book that was going to be like, this is how I did it, steps 1, 2, 3, if you just follow. I'm just telling a story. It's the story of my life. I was a miserable lawyer, and I hated it, and I thought, wow, I'm looking for pockets and things, and I'm a business casual environment, and I came up with this concept of something that, 14 years later, still seems that simple. Put more better pockets in clothing. Everyone loves pockets. So that's the basis of my company. And how I've gone about selling an idea is so simple, is with my passion. So I'm actually now traveling around in this crazy car, the Polaris Slingshot, which I've decorated. Are you guys familiar with it? You've seen it at all? It's actually parked right in front. It's actually a motorcycle, and it has no top. And I left Sun Valley, Idaho, about a week and a half ago in minus 11-degree weather, and drove down to Las Vegas at CES, and had an opportunity to hang out with everyone wanted to ride. I'm taking Guy Kawasaki and Robert Scoble and a variety of other people, and there's tons of media devoted to that. So I found a way to get people to stand in front of the car and do this, what we call the power Pocket Man pose, and take pictures, and they post to the internet. So, it's a great experience. I made my way to LA, and now I'm in San Francisco. I'm actually going to leave it with Robert Scoble, and we're having a Pimp My Polaris contest, where we're going to try to get suggestions of what cool stuff to put in the car. We're going to do some live streams and stuff, and then I'm going to take it back to Sun Valley. So I did mention it was minus 11 degrees when I left Sun Valley in that car, and it has no top. So, and I was really fortunate. I don't know if you know the famous photographer Thomas Hawk, but I had an opportunity to hang out with him yesterday, and we shot the car, and it was a great experience. And there's a bunch of those pictures online. So, I firmly believe that showing is much better than talking, although I do talk quite a bit, for those of you who know me. So, first and foremost, for those of you who don't know SCOTTeVEST, I am wearing one of our SCOTTeVEST products, actually not just one, but 3. It all started out as a vest, and therefore the name SCOTTeVEST, and it's grown into a company with more than 40 different products, ranging from pants to shirts to jackets, winter jackets, and still the vest, women's clothing and the like. We've been in Inc.'s fastest growing company list now 3 years in a row, and we do this all out of beautiful Sun Valley, Idaho. So I'm going to show you what's in my pockets and the reason why I came up with this concept of designing a SCOTTeVEST. Well, first and foremost, I came up with this idea of patenting the concept of wires in clothing. Because one thing happened to me, it's probably happened to a lot of you. It was pre-iPod days. I had a Discman. I'm listening to music. I got wires dangling all over me. I'm in an airport and I walk by a doorknob and practically pulls off my ear. I grabbed the thing. I expected to see my earlobe on it. So I said, there's got to be a better way to design clothing that incorporates a method to wire your devices. So I came up with this idea of incorporating headphone wires, but not just headphone wires, but also for batteries as well, because you want to keep your devices charged all the time, and wiring it and routing it through clothing. I filed for a patent, I got the patent, reissued the patent, actually went on Shark Tank to present that company. There's a whole backstory to Shark Tank. If any of you have seen that episode, it was highly controversial. But, and I actually spent the first several years of the company just thinking, okay, all I want to do is clip coupons. I came up with an invention. I just want to license to other companies. I don't want to make anything. I just want to, collect checks. Well, what I found is, in the apparel business especially, no one wants to license a patent. They don't believe in patents. So I figured, especially if the patent wasn't even issued. So I had a patent pending, and I started SCOTTeVEST merely as a proof of concept back in 2000. And a funny thing happened. SCOTTeVEST became wildly successful, due to what I was doing, passionate personal promoting, because I did not want to practice law ever again. So I took every opportunity to get out and talk to people. You can find me on blogs back in 2000, just interacting with people, trying to get them. So without further ado, we have a pocket here for my cell phone that you can actually see and control right through the fabric. Get your calls without taking your phone out, and it's really cool. So that's my iPhone 6, and the wires, it can be wired up right through here, through this patented system. I have an iPad mini, and that will fit the full-size iPad too. I have a passport here, and safe and secure. We actually have a guarantee offering, if you're ever pickpocketed, we'll reimburse you up to $1,000, because it knows no one's going to reach into that pocket. We've no claims on it, but I get to promote it. So this pocket, actually, on the newer garments, we've lined with RFID blocking material. I think that one, no, it's not. Yeah. So, to me, it's always about batteries. So I've got an extra battery, an extra cord. I've got a Bluetooth headset, and this I just grabbed. I got some suntan lotion, because I got gloves. I got a GoPro that hopefully didn't break when it fell. I got a key holder. Guys are always forgetting their keys, and that was part of the frustration and how I started SCOTTeVEST. I was always asking my wife where I put stuff, and she said, "Why don't you just create something?" That was the moment that SCOTTeVEST was formed. I have to feel all the pockets to make sure I got them all. I have another battery, because without batteries I'm screwed. I've got a charger. So I could go on. Let me just empty out. I have a 2 terabyte disk. I've got something to clean my eyeglasses, and I got. No, that's a great question. And I've got a radar detector, because what we've done is, and I'm going to take it off because it's a little warm in here. We've designed this so that the weight resides on your shoulders. So we've engineered, we've taken a completely different approach to clothing. I mean, I really feel like I've reinvented pockets. If you think about it, clothing, when they designed pockets, they weren't thinking about what goes in it. And that little pocket that Levi's have, who uses that? So in my pants pockets, I've got, this, for the microphone all the way down here. I keep my wallet down here and around back. I've got layers of pockets, and yet they look like, the concept is design clothing that first and foremost looks good, but design pockets so that you can carry all your stuff. This pocket is actually one of my favorites in this shirt, and one of the hardest ones to, because it's a design. It's for my iPhone 6. We engineer clothing with fulcrums and design. We really engineer clothing so that it doesn't rub up against you uncomfortably. I mean, you can't make it disappear. It's a big unit, but it enables you to carry it. And then how many guys are sitting down and you're always sitting on your wallet? Well, we just moved it down a little lower, so that it's down here. So that's the basis for SCOTTeVEST and the clothing. Now, my story is really about my passion and just going around and being in opportunities like this. I never turn down an opportunity to talk about my product. Never, ever. And using the internet, it's enabled me to view the world differently. And I've done this from the beginning. I send video messages because passion doesn't come through in an email. It never can. In fact, passion in an email can often be read as anger. And passion, there's a very fine line between passion and anger anyway, or as it can be possibly perceived, because I get really excited about something. Scott, why are you so angry? I'm not angry, I'm just really excited about it. So what I've done for a very long time is I use tools, Mail VU and various other things. I send email messages of videos. So I convey my message through videos, even if it's a short message, and by doing so, it enables people to really get a sense as to who I am and what my message is. And on my website itself, if you look at it, there's a lot of video, there's a lot of me. If you look, any of you are old enough to watch the Brady Bunch, I'm looking around, several of you are. So, remember Sam the Butcher? You go in, you buy some steak from Sam, you know him, he's not going to be your best friend, but you know him, you feel comfortable giving him your money. Well, my premise is that if people feel comfortable that they know Scott, they can send me an email, they can engage with me on Facebook or any of the other, that's my primary channel. I would encourage you guys all, if not, friend me, because I'm very prolific. Follow me and choose and pick and choose, and be forewarned, you start pressing like too much, you're going to get deep in. I'm going to overwhelm your feed, but it's interesting stuff. So basically, the premise is create these personal relationships and let my passion come through in an authentic way, completely unscripted, as the cards will indicate. So, but passion is one thing, but without the drive to follow through, I have a philosophy. I run my business on two letters: FU, follow up. Every single email I get, I follow up on, until it comes to a natural conclusion or it's dead. So, I have a drive. I never have an idea, and I have tons that I'm not willing to write down and do. And that's why we're able to create a business doing about $12 million with 15 people in Sun Valley, Idaho, because we are just using technology to find a way to constantly implement everything that we come up with. And we've been able to do it. But you don't want to be just around a passionate person who's just talking about all these great things and never doing anything. That's boring. There's an expression in Ferris Bueller, one of my favorite quotes. In Ferris Bueller, it goes, the movie, of course, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around, you're going to miss it. And my take on that expression is, life moves pretty fast. If you stop and look around, you might miss it. So I'm just moving really fast in everything that I do, and it's with a lot of drive. So this is obvious. I mean, a lot of and all these messages are in the book. Like I said, it's not like chapter 1, these top 4 steps in order to achieve success. I read this and I look at no shit. You do shit. You just constantly do stuff. If you look at what I've done in the past week, it's been a whirlwind. I decided, I bought this car just by way of example. I got it 3 weeks ago. I got it scanned. I recognized that, hey, here's this vehicle, has no compartments in it at all, no trunk at all. I'm going to go to CES. I'm going to put my logo on it. I just generated the Pocket Man logo just in time for the book, which, by the way, we wrote in 6 weeks, beginning to end. It literally published 8 weeks after we had our first meeting on it. And that's not to say it's not a good book, because it is. And if it isn't, write about it. Go look at Amazon reviews. Those are all authentic reviews. So, I got the car and I said, I'm going to Vegas. And my PR firm sucked. And I just decided I'm just going to drive around and offer really notable people rides in the car. And I sit in the car, and it occurred to me, how am I going to create content that is going to get out there and get more people to know about my brand? Because we don't have multi-million-dollar budgets for advertising. I mean, most of our advertising, we spend a minuscule amount on advertising. It's PR, is what we've done. So I get in a ride in a car. I say, I'm going to ask you one question at the end of the ride. I'm like, fine, take me for a ride. So I take him for a ride. What's your passion? And that's the question. And I'm learning so much about people and what makes people successful and how people can perhaps find their passion. And it's really been a fascinating experience. My premise is, for me, when I was practicing law at a very major law firm, DLA Piper, the largest law, I was miserable. At the end of every day, I had to somehow find 8 hours that were worth writing down at $300 an hour that were worthy of being billable, and it was excruciating. My premise is you can find a job or do what you're passionate about and tie it to your work. You can be exceptionally successful and happy as well. And I think I've done that, and I think there's a template for that, and I think more and more people can do that. And I see it all the time. My maid, for example, how can you be passionate about being a maid? She comes in, I'm going to clean this house. She really is passionate about cleaning my house, and she is therefore a lot happier in doing so. I get a beer at the local brewery, and the guy who's pouring me the beer is, I'm asking him what his passion is. He's like, beer, and he's telling me how beer is made, and I learned more about beer in that experience than anything else. So it was weird though, because I'm on this mission, this quest, talking to people about their passion, and someone asked me, "What's your passion?" I wasn't prepared to answer. It caught me by surprise. So it's interesting because I reflected as a child, my passion has always been fast cars. So here I am driving a fast car around the country. And ideally, I have this plan for myself to continue to promote my clothing line and perhaps a new line based upon this Pocket Man emblem and the spirit of it and everything else, very similar to what Paul Newman did, drive race cars. But I'll get a team of Polaris cars and drive around the country. The problem is it's a motorcycle, so it can't drive on car tracks, and motorcycles don't want to have it on its track either. So I'm going to pause for a second and take a sip, and if anyone... Am I going too fast, too slow, too boring, too passionate?
The question is around, explain your path on how you incorporated passion into your career.
Well, my career, I was a nice Jewish kid, and I was given, two options: be a doctor or a lawyer, or go into Dad's business. Dad happened to own a cemetery. So I went into the cemetery business, and I was knocking doors, door to door, selling cemetery lots in Cincinnati. It's a hard way to make a living at 21 years old. Not something I wanted to do, but something I did, and I was involved in that for a couple years, and actually really successful at it. Not passionate about it. Although you could be passionate about it, you're helping people plan and. But not something, you graduate college and, you're excited about doing in my case. So sold the business out from beneath me. I didn't know what to do with myself. And, I knew I had to make a living, and I knew I could make a living as a lawyer. So I became a lawyer. And I knew very soon in practicing law that it wasn't going to be for me. So I was starting to look for exit strategies. And the problem is, and I think this happens to so many people, I was making really good money at that age, and even now, and looking back, and you're just stuck. You're like, to take that risk is really, really, really hard. To walk away from that all. Fortunately, I didn't have children. I had a really supportive wife, and we kept looking for things to do. I tried to go into biz dev roles, but once you're a lawyer, the whole world looks at you as a lawyer. You have like a scarlet L on your forehead. They really do. I applied for jobs, and they're like, but you're a lawyer. And I've actually been involved in some lawsuits, including with Scott USA. When I moved to Ketchum, Idaho, they tried to force me to change the name of my company because they thought I moved to confuse people into thinking they were buying ski poles from SCOTTeVEST. Are you familiar with Scott USA? They make bikes and ski poles. So, I just did a lot of soul searching, and I had a really supportive wife, and I decided if I'm not going to be able to get an opportunity working for someone else, I had to try it for myself. So I was really fixated on coming up with the perfect idea, an idea that no one else has thought of. And I came up with this concept for wiring clothing and patented it and thought that was the idea, but it really wasn't about the idea. And it wasn't about the patent, despite all the stuff on Shark Tank, the arguments about patents and stuff. It was about building a brand and being passionate about it and execution. I mean, you hear this so much, it's who can execute better, who can follow up better. I mean, how many opportunities are in your inbox that you don't bring to conclusion or try to maximize, and that's a short answer. There's a lot of it in the book as to how I made that transition. I mean, there were some dark moments. I mean, I at the time, when I couldn't decide, what to do, because taking that jump, is the hardest jump. And Hammaker placed an order, and I thought it was going to be Hammaker, Schlemmer. I'm a gadget guy, and at the time, Hammaker was, the coolest thing around. This is before, the really, real evolution and all the consumer electronics. I don't even know, cell phones were just developing, iPods weren't even around. And I was actually in my shrink's office trying to figure out, I'm at the lowest level, like, what am I going to do when I grow up? I'm 30-some years old. I can't figure it out. I got to support my wife. And Hammaker, the buyer from Hammaker, called while I was in the shrink's office. And I said, well, that's a sign. Well, as it turned out in that case, the buyer said yes, he wanted in, and all the stores and everything else. And lo and behold, he wasn't replying to my emails. I'm like, uh-oh, I just now quit my job. I stopped looking at all these other paths. And I then e-commerce enabled my site kind of as an afterthought. And finally showed up at Hammaker's office one day and said, hey, what's up? I got an order in China and everything else. And you're going to come through? He said, I hate to tell you this. This day is my last day. Meet the apparel buyer. And the apparel buyer wasn't a gadget buyer. She just thought, well, it's just pockets. I don't get it. I don't carry these things. So that fell through. And then as a result, that door closed, but the other door opened. And that was, to this day, over 85% of our business is direct to consumer. It enables me to have a direct relationship with the customer, and it enables my passion to come through. I go around the country and do these fan events. I don't care if 2, 4, or 50 people show up. I get an opportunity to interact with them. I'm not selling them anything. I'm telling them basically my story without the slides, which I'm pretty much doing right now. So, is that? Yeah, all right. So, so invite people along for the ride. So that's what I've done. I open up my entire life. You will not meet another CEO in the entire world that is more transparent and engages with more people. I've been crowdsourcing ideas and concepts, for a while. Again, look, on Scott Jordan, you'll see. I'm asking people ideas, I'm engaging with people, and I'm doing it in a truly passionate and authentic way. And guess what? It comes through. I'm wired so I cannot lie. There's just something about me. I fundamentally believe that 90% of people can tell a little white lie and not think anything wrong with it. Our company is founded on the basis of honesty, integrity, and transparency. So when you meet me, you get true passion, you get true authenticity. So I bring people along for the ride and truly, I take them in my car and I ask them about their passion. I'm truly taking them for, not just just the metaphorical ride. I'm taking them for a ride. But I think Cliff's been following me for a while, and he can attest to it. And it's funner that way. It's fun to do things with more people, and then they root for you. They root for you. They say, "Who's this guy who quit his law job and just reinvented pockets?" And even more absurd, January 1, I declared myself the Pocket Man, and I'm creating this insane, absurd superhero based upon every man's gadget, and a gadget guy, and just I at CES I go to parties and everyone collectively does the Pocket Man, and they get in front of the car and they yell. It's something that makes you smile. So I'm inviting people along the ride, and I find that passion is infectious too, because when people are around me and when I'm around other really passionate people, you feel it, you sense it, you want to do something. And so what I've had the opportunity to do is ask what their passion is, and maybe give them a kick in the butt, and maybe just say, hey, you should do it. I'm not going to preach to them, and if I can influence one of 1,000 people I talk to, and 10 years from now they're still doing it. That's pretty cool. I mean, I really enjoy that. So, be willing to go far, but make sure you go far enough. I mean, it's just finishing things. It's just, once I start something, I just want to make sure that, I take it to the furthest level possible. And now there will come times where, it just doesn't make sense, and it's time to stop. Even just getting in the Google store, I wanted to be in the Google store. I knew it made sense. It took a lot of back and forth emails and begging, and now it's here, and they're doing really, really well, and they want more, and they're inviting me to speak, and that's freaking, I'm at Google speaking for my very first speech ever, so this is fun. Embrace controversy. As a small company, with no outside investors, just my wife and I own 100% of the stock, virtually no debt, and profitable since our second year in business. And with the personality that I have, and with my legal background, there are many times that I'm faced with a controversial issue. For example, when I first started the company, the E in SCOTTeVEST looked like an italicized E. Remember E in E-Business Solutions for IBM? I get a letter from IBM. Please stop using an E that resembles. They owned the italicized E, so I had a choice. I could fight it, to what end, or I could roll over, or the third choice, fighting it never makes sense. I would never encourage. But I said, okay. I did a big press release. David versus Goliath. IBM's forcing me to change this E. I agreed to a settlement agreement. I will change the E, in all future runs. But I'm not going to destroy all my current garments. But but everything I have now. So I couldn't keep them in stock. I sent an email out, people from IBM, I want the IBM E. I really look at, if you look at controversies, and most people avoid them, you're avoiding one half of the situations and one half of the opportunities. So you look at something controversial and say, how can I work that in my favor? Now again, I don't have a board of directors, I don't have a boss, I have a personality that can get away with these things, but for me, it's worked. Same thing with Scott USA when they sued me, and it's the world's most expensive E. I had to change the E to all uppercase because SCOTTeVEST with the lower, was a lowercase E, and they said, well, it looks too much like Scott USA, and so they made me change it. And I write about this in the book, and the whole arguing with lawyers, and I'm sitting there with the lawyers in settlement, mandatory negotiations in federal court, and they said, okay, what we're gonna allow you to do is continue using the name SCOTTeVEST, but you have to make the E uppercase. And I could have continued fighting it, and I just decided that I would accept that. But then they said, well, and you also have to pay us the $100,000 in legal expenses that we've incurred to date fighting this. I was like, you have got to be kidding. And I said some really colorful things to my lawyer, and before I said them, I said, you are my mouthpiece. You are hired to repeat everything I say. You go in there and you tell them exactly these 3 words. They're in the book. I'm not proud of them, but I wrote them down. I'm not going to say them aloud, but and I'm not paying their legal fees. They had a choice of how to, but I embraced the controversy, and I got out there in my town, little small town of Ketchum, Idaho, with 5,000 people. Everyone knew me, and I had immediate underdog status. Why is Scott USA suing you? I'm like, I have no idea. I made more friends, got more notoriety from that, and there's a lot of other experiences that if you do properly, as I get larger, as I get more well-known, it gets harder to do because, I have more to lose, but I still have that edge. And like when Mark Cuban and I got into the fight in Shark Tank over patents, I made it public. I used my megaphone too. Everyone is so wired to run from controversy. And I think there's a lot of benefit to embracing controversy. This is actually really interesting. I have been able to meet the most interesting key people in this role. I mean, I just so many interesting people. And my favorite one is actually a very famous San Francisco person, Amy Tan. She placed an order on our website, and my wife, who is the president of the company, processes all the orders. She goes through the order and she says, wow, Amy Tan. She forwards it to me, says, Scott, I think this is the Amy Tan. She emails it to me, and I forward it to Amy, who I didn't know. I'm embarrassed to say not so embarrassed, but I didn't read her books. It was kind of not my genre. And I forwarded it to the email address. I said, are you the Amy Tan? And not with that inflection, but just, are you the Amy Tan? And she writes back, yes. And as a result, I have had just a tremendous relationship with her because I treat her like she's a normal person. And I stay at her home. I'm having dinner with her tomorrow night. And this goes on and on. Thomas Hawk, who's done most of the photography you see here and of the books, and a bunch of really, really famous people that I encounter. Steve Wozniak, he bought something on my website, same way. Laura forwards it to me, and I write back, thanks, I'm a huge fan. And speed is really important to me too. Rather than sitting there and wondering what to say and trying to pick the perfect words, you just be authentic. I think you can get away with a lot more if you're quicker. People can be a lot more forgiving. They like the fact that you're really fast, and that matches my personality. So I write to him, thank you very much for the order. He was and is my idol, and he writes back, oh, this is an excellent accessory for an iPod. So before iPhones were out. Can I use that on my website? I write back, sure. Within a day, on my homepage, Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, says, SCOTTeVEST is an excellent accessory for an iPad. iPod. Let me get the I's straight. And as a result, we developed this great friendship. We shot a series of Wozisodes together, on green screen, did all these fun things and did all these photo shoots. And, I've gotten to see him a lot of times. So it's just, when you're building a brand like I was building a brand, what I recognize is the importance of getting key influencers and not treating them like they're the most special person. They know that what they've done is good, but they want to be treated like normal folks and have normal relationships and to be very careful as I publicize things, because there was a point in my life that I actually live streamed me working constantly. You have to be very careful as to what you would reveal, but so this is really hard for me. I just thought everyone was wired like me. I mean, I had no mentor. As a lawyer, I had no training. They just throw you in there and say, start, dotting I's and crossing T's, and you report to a collection of 4 or 5 partners, and you gravitate towards one or another. And so, after I start, my biggest problem in running the business is people. Managing people, because it's hard. I honestly, when I was taking an HR class at college, I went to the Ohio State University. Go Buckeyes, champions. I was like, why HR? You pay people money, they do their job. Isn't that there's a contract there? I mean, as I've learned from the way you guys operate, you guys are amazing, your HR practices, what you do. I want to implement it. It's compounded. In my case, I'm so passionate, my passion is often misunderstood. I'm so visionary, that I'm constantly changing. I'm thinking 3 years out, and I don't have the time to explain why I'm thinking to every person at all times. I live in a community that has 5,000 people. All there primarily to ski or retire. I don't have the applicant pool. So, I would hire people and expect that they would be looking at Google Analytics every day and how'd the sale do? And not everyone, especially employees that don't have that same stake in that, but you are that passionate, and that's okay. And I'm learning to accept that. But what I'm also learning to do is try to put people in jobs that have elements that they can be passionate about. With as small as a company as ours, with 15 employees, that basically has to do, just as much as a company at Tommy Bahama, from design to supporting retail stores and doing retail stores and catalog. We have a lot going on, so that if you are passionate about something, I want you doing that, because you're going to do it better. You're going to have more fun, and guess what? You're going to be more fun to work with. Because at this point, I don't have to work another day in my life, and I always wondered, why do people continue to keep working more? Isn't it all about just getting to that number and then retiring? And if you guys participated in early stock options, you were here because you enjoy doing it. So what I've learned is I want to be around passionate people. I want to be around people who are excited. I think I set a bar for passion. I'm like an ever ready bunny on passion. And that's okay. I'm always ready to reinvent myself when there's an opportunity. I did it this year. Who else would say, okay, on January 1, I'm Pocket Man, and with all that goes along with it, got my own car, got my own logo, and my own theme song, for God's sake. Every superhero needs his theme song, so says Kanye. So I've done that several times along the way, and I think people get bored, especially a brand, but you have to have consistent messaging as well. We reinvented our company, our logo several times. It used to be SEV until we came up with this, the pocket icon, which speaks directly to our brand. It's a tough brand to explain to someone, especially with a name that SCOTTeVEST, the E is that silent, Scott E, it's SCOTTeVEST. I mean, it's hard to pronounce. So I think it's important, whether in your job or in your life and your role, don't be afraid to reinvent yourself. I moved a lot when I was a kid. And through all these moves, I was born in Philadelphia, I moved to Cincinnati, went to school all over Ohio, Columbus and Case Western Law, and then moved to Chicago. Now I live in Sun Valley. And each time I move, I get to start over. But having started over, the one consistency is I'm still that same passionate person that I was in that old city. I still can't lose that. So, and I hope I never will. And it was only when I first really, wrote the book and really thought about it and really said, embrace that passion. It's who I am. Don't hide from it. Don't, and encourage other people to find it as well. So, that's the last slide. It's not. I want to take lots of questions. There is a link. You can download a free copy of the book at apparently tinyurl/PocketMan. I think that's a typo. Couldn't really be that, could it? I have cards for that. So I will answer anything that you have a question about.
I feel like, from an outsider perspective, about 3-4 years ago, it looked like your business hit a tipping point. You had like 3 or 4 employees and a handful of products, and then suddenly you seemed to like explode. You were constantly posting you were hiring for all these positions, and you had a women's line, and now you're up to like 40 or something. And I was wondering if you perceived that there was a tipping point somewhere for you somewhat recently, and if so, what happened around there that caused that?
It's a great question. The answer is about 4 years ago or thereabouts. We historically, we've been doing this now since 2000. So we were growing 20, 40, 50 sometimes, but no more than 40% a year for a number of years. And then we started doubling in growth. And I freaked out, because you hear all these stories of the entrepreneur who needs to step aside, let a professional manager come in, manage their business. And when you have an inventory-based business with long lead times for manufacturing cycles, it's really complicated. And so I actually, when we started doubling in size, I hired a lot of people. And I hired a president, in fact, a really big number, and they were mistakes, really bad hiring decisions, and there was a lot of activity that you saw online, and I learned a tremendous amount about management. Had no corporate culture. We went from 3 people to 21 people without saying, what is it that's important to SCOTTeVEST? Not even from a core. What does SCOTTeVEST mean? What is our brand proposition? And all those questions that you have. So the problem was when you grow too fast, and you're a slave to the growth. You grow or die, but be careful not to die growing, because that's what happens. So fortunately, we had the wherewithal to stop and slow down. We let a lot of people go, or the attrition happened, and we focused on, it sounds so obvious, focus on the fundamentals, and we created a corporate goal. But it's true, and we focused on, the primary goal for last year was happy employees. I just wanted, the premise was, well, actually it was build brand number one, to get, make our brand stand for something, and understand that it stood for pockets, and the functionality of pockets, and the engineering, and then make happy employees. So as a result, we had a bit of stagnation after we doubled, in size in that 1 year, and we've been now, without the pressures of outside investors, we've been slowly growing again. And I don't. Part of the problem is that I thought that all the .coms that came and went, all the VC stuff, all the stuff you hear, you're just like, oh, the only thing that's meaningful is to grow to 100 million and then go public. And there are companies, Bonobo's a perfect example. Are you familiar with Bonobo's? They've sold more stock than they have clothing, and they have a valuation that probably is $500 million, but they have not made a single dime yet. I have been focused on profits and lately happiness, more so than profits, because if you have happiness, the profits will come. So I've never, though, really experienced the true Malcolm Gladwell sense of the word tipping point. And I always feel like it should happen. I don't get it. I've got all these celebrities. I come here, I get exposed. I'm in Google, I'm in Sky Mall, and I'm in major motion pictures are showing, and Michael Mann calling me up and saying you have great products, and I'm in CES. I tool around with TechCrunch, and it just doesn't happen that way. There's not that explosion, or it hasn't happened so far. But you know what? That's okay, because I'm living a pretty good life. I mean, I built the house of my dreams on top of my business. I live in Sun Valley, which is gorgeous, and I get to do pretty much whatever I want and call it work. Did that kind of answer your question?
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your business, by the way. I mean, you've been a good customer for many years. How long?
I bought my first jacket from you in 2005, I want to.
Wow.
2006.
How'd you hear about us?
I was looking I was going on an overseas trip to Germany, and I was looking for a sort of an all-weather jacket that was going to be able to carry my stuff. And I was in a store and saw one of yours. I don't remember what it was. A travel store. It was a sort of a brown felt one. You haven't sold it for years.
Yeah, the rodeo.
Yeah, and fell in love with it. And
was it Edwards Luggage or?
Pardon me?
Edwards Luggage here.
Possibly, yeah. I think that's right. Yeah,
one of our few resellers.
And it really worked out well. That jacket was stolen a little while ago.
The tough thing is
how to replaced, of course.
We've always struggled with how do you market a product that what do people search for? Clothing with lots of. What do you search for when you want something that you didn't know existed? Clothing with lots of clever pockets. There's not a lot of people searching for that. I mean, travel vests. We own travel vests. I mean, you search travel vests. Oh, and yeah, I missed the important. When we started doubling, it was interesting. We used to be highly focused on gadgets. It was dark and very masculine site, and it was very gadget oriented, very male site. And we sent out a request to our customers for pictures of themselves wearing our products, and we were overwhelmed. Thousands of pictures came back. And everyone was wearing it at a location, like Great Wall of China. I got more pictures of people wearing the stuff at Great Wall of China than any other place. I mean, and I said, wait, maybe we don't make gadget clothing, because gadget people, if you're in front of your computer, you don't travel. If you're not traveling, you don't need pockets. I mean, you need one pocket to sit, but not a lot. So we changed our branding. It was like 5 years ago to travel clothing, and we came up with a tagline for the trip of your life. Whether it's a trip to the grocery store or a trip to China, you need a pocket to put your stuff in. And as a result of changing our branding and being inclusive, incorporating our customer base in a lot of the photography and the catalogs, our business doubled. And then we went on that slide of a ton of bad hires, and now our branding is more pocket focused, not so much travel. but it's more about the pockets. So
why not have like a license, like Gore-Tex,
Well, that's the premise. I mean, that was the goal. Licensed by technology-enabled clothing. I mean, that was when I started. I didn't want to sell a single piece of clothing, and this is the company I pitched to Shark Tank. I couldn't mention the word SCOTTeVEST because if I did, I had to give the producers 5% of my business, and yet they kept asking for SCOTTeVEST. So it's, but that, like Intel Inside. I mean,
Dolby Digital, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was the premise. But it's just clothing companies don't want to pay for the privilege of putting a piece of Velcro and controlling why. We have license to VF Corporation, which owns North Face and Ralph Lauren and Under Armour. We have most of the major clothing brands are licensees of ours through litigation.
Yeah, so what are some challenges you faced and lessons you learned from starting a business that was not your expertise? So going completely from law into something you had very limited background in.
God, I mean, that's a loaded question. I mean, a lot. I mean, everything. What I found is that any expert I hired, within a very short period of time, I could, and doing a couple Google searches, thank you very much, I appreciate it. I could learn almost as much about their expertise, myself. And oftentimes, I found that it was easier to just do it myself than rely on outside consultants to do my work for me. So I think the challenge I still face is when do I know I have a good consultant that I can rely on them to do what I'm hiring them to do, and not have to do it myself. I still struggle with that. I mean, I've hired several PR firms along the way. I hired these experts to get me PR, and they cannot do it. I fired one, probably fired my 5th PR firm, maybe even more. And I talk about this a lot in the book. And and I immediately hired another one. If you're watching, please do a good job. Thank you.
So when you quit law, did you have a fallback plan or like a time limit as to, I'm going to try this, if not, go back to law?
No, I really didn't. I didn't think it through. I thought that, the worst case scenario was I go bankrupt. And in this country, we're very fortunate. It's the best country in the world, to do business. I mean, you go bankrupt, well, who cares? You start over. I could always go back to law. That was my fallback plan, and it was a miserable one. And every year, my law license comes up for renewal, and I'm like, oh, do I want to pay the $250? No, I'm ready. I really think I don't need a fallback plan, and every year I still send the damn check in. So, and my wife's a lawyer too, and she wouldn't do it. Yeah.
Hey, Scott, just a quick question. You mentioned Google Analytics before.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you use that, or if that's been instrumental in any of your success so
It's
far?
a love-hate situation. There's so
what do you
much.
love and what do you hate?
I love the amount of data, and I hate the amount of data. I mean, I was a very early adopter. I mean, we've been on Google Analytics since the beginning of time, and I love the fact that within a second I can see how things are performing, and as a result, it puts a lot of pressure on me because I know that if I do something, like I'm on this trip and my car has QR codes on it, and who uses QR codes, especially with a car driving 70 miles an hour? But I look at the Google Analytics every day, and it makes you a slave to information. I really wish that there were better human beings involved in my organization who can condense the information to give me actionable items. I used to look at it religiously, daily, twice a day it was up. I haven't looked at it in years. I rely on my wife to tell me if we're doing well or not. And at the end of every day, I say, how we do today? Oh, it was a good day, bad day. No numbers. We have never done a strategic plan, never done any, I don't review, it just keep trying to focus on what I think is the right thing, and it's proved pretty good for me. So,
your background is being a lawyer, and you're not happy about it, but it enabled you to come up with a fund to start this business. Now, I came from Japan 3 years ago because of the disaster, and I pretty much had to start from scratch. Our life in the United States, and I had a big dream, and I am actually starting a business, but the challenge with raising the money, and I got the people who invest, but the people has a lot of fear of losing the money, and so, I'm dealing with that. And so I guess the question is, if you weren't coming from the background of having money, what would you have done? And would you choose people whose hard-earned money and have a lot of fear around it? Is that a good investors? What would you do?
So
in
when
that
I
case?
started, this is a great question. I always thought you start a business with other people's money. I mean, I just thought that's what you did. And, I actually started with a home equity loan. It was $60,000 was the seed money, and at the time, this was before the real estate crash. It was fairly easy to get a home equity loan just based on credit score, and that wasn't a great deal of money, to start a business. That is all the capital I used to start my business effectively. So, but to me, that was a lot of money. I mean, to invest $60,000, but I was prepared to lose it, and if I lost it, I guess I would have lost my house, but which would have sucked. But I looked at all sorts of different alternatives. I looked to SBA loans. I looked at having investors, and in fact, one guy who sits on my advisory board, along with Steve Wozniak, who is on my board of advisors, which I'm proud to say. One guy came in, and I said, this is right after 9/11. My business was doing horribly. Everyone's was. It's a luxury item. You don't need a SCOTTeVEST to travel. And which I'll tell a related story too. And he says, he looked at my books and he said, I don't think you need investors. I think you can do it, because before 9/11, I was already starting to be cash flow positive. And then after 9/11, with the holidays coming up, and he convinced me. And he stood to gain, because if he could have raised money for me, he would have gotten a piece, and it would have been profitable for him. And he said, don't do it. And it was the smartest thing I ever did, because the time and energy you will spend keeping your investors up to date and keeping them happy and wondering when their exit strategy is, and wondering why you made this decision, I'd much rather dedicate that to the business. So in my case, it wasn't the money that I made while practicing law, because most of that was spent on living big in Chicago. You don't save that much money at that age as much as you should. But having the luxury of a wife working full time that was completely supportive of the idea, which was awesome. I mean, I couldn't have done it without her. And to this day, all of my success is because of her. She is the hardest working person in the world. She gets to the office every day at 12:30, and she leaves the next day at 4. She puts in 16-hour days, and she's there processing work. She's like a machine. She just loves the work, and she makes sure that we don't make mistakes and we don't make bad hiring decisions. I don't know. It's hard, because you have to have a home to borrow against. But what I would advise you is find a business that doesn't require a lot of capital. I mean, service businesses, websites. I mean, do something that doesn't require the capital investment. Most businesses in America are service businesses.
But what about the passion? The passion. I have this background of writing a first book on raw food diet for Japan, and I became the raw food person in Japan. And since this last 3 years, I have just followed my other passion, which is language. But I really want to start this juice bar, and I got the place, and I'm dealing with this PG&E building, which is a huge company, and they're just dragging us along for 6 months now. And I'm at the point I don't know what to do now. What can I do to make this move faster? Or what should I?
Well, if some things are outside your control, you can't blame yourself for doing that path. I'd find there are other places. If you're really passionate about that idea, find a way to pursue it. And if you need investors to do it, then find some friends and family, because if they really understand you. But go into it really passionate. Like if you're going to fail, there was no plan B for me. There was not, and I painted myself intentionally into a corner, because I knew I had to succeed, because failure was not a good option for me.
Thank you, Scott.
Sure.
I just glimpsed through the Amazon review you mentioned. I noticed there are entries like kind of wish list, which you mentioned in the book, like a detail, like how you started with like a funding, manufacturing, handling, shipping, growing customer bases. I want to take this opportunity to satisfy those curious souls. And it's kind of related to that gentleman's question, like how you growing, but instead of making the loaded question, maybe just like when you get that idea, you get that home equity fund, how do you start it, like getting manufacturer and start the business?
I am the only apparel maker and maybe the only manufacturer in the country and maybe the world who has been manufacturing in Asia and has never been to my factories, ever. I don't know if I should be proud of that, but I'm still working with the same factories I started with. I have great inspection companies. I use Skype. I use video. I have great correspondence. So I want to start there. If you ask someone, in my case, once I started telling people I wanted to make something in China, everyone knew someone who knew someone who knew someone who made something in China, and they could get you there one way or another. I mean, and the problem is that everyone along the way wants a cut. Everyone's hand is out. I mean, it's like old school merchant business. It really is. So fortunately, one of my factories was the one I'm still working in, one of my major ones that, 14 years straight. And my factories have all come out to Ketchum, Idaho. And, it's like a 2-day trip to come out to visit us instead of me going out to them. I'd like to change that because I think I do need, they're an extension of my company. But so the answer is just passionately, decide what the end game is. And work backwards. You need a factory in China. You need you need a place for your juice bar. What are the steps it's going to take? Where's the critical path? And I do everything that way. And anything that is a third party, I do first, because I know I can. Anything that's outside of my control, I want to start earlier. I mean, it's critical path. It's
one of your tenets was a day of action is better than like a week of thinking. A lot of people I know, even in Google, they have great ideas and they try to work on them part-time. Obviously, it sounds like you went the cold turkey route, where you just said, hey, look, I'm going to go full-time, I'm going to quit my job, do X, Y, Z. How do you think about what you gain psychically by making that full plunge versus the advantages of having a job and working in your free time?
I think it's dramatic. I mean, to say I am jumping in full-time, I'm painting myself in a corner, I mean, it's... The flip side of that is people who go into a business with an exit strategy. I don't have an exit strategy. I want to go in thinking, what today, tomorrow, next year looks like, but I don't want to worry about when I'm going to sell out. So I think it's really important that if you are going to make... Now, it doesn't mean that you just come up with an idea and you love the idea, and before you do your research, you quit your great paying job at Google or wherever you are, and you just go off and running. But you need to know when to jump. You need to know when to take that first step. And then you know what? After you take that first step, take another one. Don't pause. Keep going. I mean, and that's what I did. Because I got affirmation along the way. But not everyone, when I told people I was making really good money as a lawyer, and I told people, I'm going to stop and form this company called SCOTTeVEST about pockets. They thought I was crazy. I mean, people fell in two camps. Either they thought I was brilliant or crazy. There was no one in between. No one was like, oh, well, that might be a good idea. That's kind of been the story of my life. I mean, tend to be a little controversial, I guess. So, I want to thank you guys. This has been fun for my first speech. Did I do okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.